Well, the Ag Startup Engine is about ag tech opportunities, which is what your company has been about on the first edge, really, of precision agriculture, here in the United States. As you think about the most compelling opportunities for agricultural technologies going forward, whether it's in precision agriculture or anything else, what's most interesting or compelling to you?
Well, certainly there's an explosion of information-related technologies because with the internet and with all the data that is being gathered or data that hasn't been gathered that can be gathered with modern electronics and wireless connectivity and cloud storage, that kind of thing. We're doing some things in that arena, and I see a lot of these startups several of these startups are doing things in that area. And I think there's obviously many large and many startup companies pursuing that, and they won't all be successful, but I do see that there are big opportunities for the companies that do the right things to basically make information more available, or maybe more importantly, more usable by the end user, whether that's the crop farmer or the livestock farmer, that kind of thing.
Yeah, we certainly generate a lot of data today for farmers. But the question in my mind, and maybe in some others, is can you make decisions that change anything using that data? And I think it's better today than it was 10 years ago, but I don't know if you have any thoughts about where that goes.
It needs to get better. There is tons and tons of data out there, particularly yield data that's some farmers have more than 20 years of yield data, but have done very little with it other than it's interesting to look at. But many of the farmers are not capable of doing sophisticated analysis. Some use consultants who are quite good that use that data to make recommendations on hybrids, fertilizer rates, variable rate planning or fertilization, that kind of thing. But there's a lot of farmers that have data that could be used that isn't used, and I think that's where some of the people that do the right things in the area of creating useful information that the farmer can use and act on is an opportunity. I think another opportunity, just maybe more in the area of, I shouldn't say only in that area, but both in the hardware and the data area, is making the technology easier to use, so to speak. Because some of this technology is difficult for many of the people out there.
Yeah, a farmer friend of mine with a big farm said somebody in ag technology had said that they estimated that only 50% of the capabilities of precision agriculture are used by most farmers. So he went to the leader of his operation and said, what percentage do you suppose we use? And he said like 40 to 50% or something.
I'm surprised he said that. To be honest with you. I think the number might even be lower. A lot of people using it, but are they using it to its potential, I think is the question.
So opportunities and challenges around using data, around making the technology easier to use and more accessible and more usable. Any other challenges for agricultural technology as you look at the next 5 to 10 years?
When you say challenges? Or
challenges. And sometimes challenges are opportunities as well.
Well, one challenge with all this ag tech stuff is the adoption rate, and that gets into not only making it easier to use. Many of the decision makers on farms, crop farms in particular, are older and they're afraid of technology. I've known farmers who said, I don't touch a computer, I don't want anything to do with it. Maybe they learned to use their yield monitor, their steering and their tractor and so on, but and I've known farmers that there's additional things they can do in the area of their hardware and their machinery, but they're afraid to move into it for their fear they won't know how to use it properly, or they'll do something wrong. Particularly when you're controlling something, when you're monitoring something. If something goes wrong, you just lose some information you didn't get it. But if you're controlling something and you mess up your crops, that's a different situation.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that variable rate fertilization has been slow from an adoption perspective. Well, I've heard some comment that some of the problems with some agricultural technologies and adoption is that there isn't a clear value proposition. Well, it seems to me like variable rate fertilization is one of those precision agriculture sort of value propositions that actually is quite clear.
Right.
So in that case, is that just an adoption and sort of ease of use and changing farming practices, or what is it that holds something specific like that up?
I would say the farmers that recognize the value and either they can handle the analysis and create good prescriptions for themselves, or they work with a good agronomist advisor who they trust and know, have confidence, does that. I know there's a lot of farmers that do variable rate fertilization. I can speak to my, probably my tenant on my former parents' farms over in Illinois. I think he has that done, but I think he just trusts the local co-op to do it. He doesn't have a close advisor necessarily, but there's always I think in some farmers' concern and other people's as well, does the co-op really have the interest in reducing the farmers'
input use?
Because they're selling fertilizer.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
A good question.